Hello and welcome to Lex Talk Design. Today we are joined by Krista Shearer from Bespoke Careers. Krista began her career as an architect, graduating from the University of Sydney before going on to practice in Sydney and in London. And then she swapped out the studio for the world of recruitment in 2007. In 2009, she launched the Sydney office of Bespoke Careers, which is the world's leading recruitment firm for architects and designers. Over the last 19 years, she has helped place talent into some of the biggest names in the industry, including Cox Architecture, Grimshaw, Rogers Stirk Harbour and Partners, and Woods Bagot, and now increasingly internationally to the UK, the US, and Asia. With a career that spans from the creative to the commercial, Krista is fluent in both the language of design and the language of business. This is what gives her a rare and valuable ability to understand what skill set a design role needs and what personality type a business needs. She's also up to the minute with what's happening in the industry, from what employers are expecting and from what candidates are looking for, to where the design market is quietly shifting to next. Hello, Krista. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Renee. It's so nice to see you, as always.
Thank you. Where does this find you today?
So I'm in our Sydney office in our little meeting booth. I was in Brisbane yesterday doing an HR event, but I'm back in here. It's good. It's Friday. We've got Friday feels.
Lovely. Every time I reach out to you, you're in a different part of the world or Australia, so things are obviously going well.
Yeah, we don't travel a lot probably as much as we used to pre-COVID, but we do like a good bizcation and work hard and enjoy our global reach. So we've got our AGM coming up in Austin in 3 weeks, which should be great. So all of the international companies, we're all flying in, and it actually makes sense because the US is, one flight for everyone instead of people coming here, because we're sort of HQ now in Sydney. Our founder, Lindsay, moved here in 2020 in the middle of the beginning of the lockdowns. So we're actually HQ in Sydney now, which is great for us here too.
Yeah, game changer. Did she move because you know how everyone did a sea change during lockdown? Was it like an extreme sea change, or was it on the cards anyway?
It was on the cards. So she actually made the whole decision before COVID was anywhere. I remember she called me, and might have been the year before, and she said, she always, came to Sydney as soon as we had the business here. She actually lived in Sydney years before, and worked at Doyle's, I think, from memory, and had like a junior architecture job after she'd been in Hong Kong. And she loved Sydney, but she'd come out and visit and said, look, it's just the best city. And I know that you're in Sydney and I'm in Sydney and you've recently relocated, but it really is such a great city to live in and a great country to live in. So she just said, I'm going to move to Sydney. Do you mind if I move to Sydney? I was like, oh my God, I'd love to have you meet in Sydney.
Yeah.
So she's runs the group from Sydney. So it was a great move for Lindsay as well, because we've got Sydney and we've got Melbourne and we've got Brisbane, but we did have Hong Kong and we do have London still, Austin, New York, and Los Angeles. So her role is not in one office. It's actually, looking after all of them. So that's actually worked really well for her too. So she can actually be that person instead of being drawn into, an individual one, which has been good.
Yeah, and so you've done because I've worked in offices where I've been in global HQ and I've been in satellite offices. You've gone theoretically from being a satellite branch to under the gaze of Sauron. Not that I'm saying Lindsay is Sauron. Has that changed culture, like changed the business? Because, you've got the founder with you.
I think that, London was our HQ and that's where Bespoke started, and we've got a really great name and market standpoint. So the business turned 20 last year. So I think we're 21 this year, aren't we? I think that when I worked there, it was a thriving, bustling, and it was really growing. And then Sydney was our first offshoot. So we were our first offshoot, but it was a really long time ago now. So we're turning 17 in Sydney. So we've been around, almost as long as the UK, not quite as long, but we've also got 3 offices, and along the east coast of Australia, we've got such a strength. We've got really deep roots here. So I think in terms of Bespoke, I think we're probably we're less than 100 people, but something up to 85 to 95. I think I can't remember exactly where we're at, and growing. But we have. I'm just trying to do the maths in that. There's probably about 35 of us are in Australia. So we've got a third or more than a third, like up to a half of the people. So we've got a really good market hold here. So it kind of makes sense in lots of ways for our business as well. And I think. It was, I loved coming back here and being, on the ground and sort of starting that from scratch, because people really, I used to do a lot of worldwide recruitment. Actually, that's sort of how it launched in from over there when I came back for a wedding once when I lived in London. I was like, why don't I go and see some people? So I just emailed a whole lot of practices that I hadn't been here for 4 years or 3 years and said, I'm coming over and this is what I do. And I met with maybe 10 practices and then went back, and then I used to send them what they needed.
Oh, good.
From afar.
That's great. You're really good, I think, at organic growth, and it feels like you're quite intuitive. Like I get you're also really process driven, but it feels like you're quite intuitive as well with the business.
I think that's probably, I know we're going to get into this, but, seeing opportunities or being proactive, and really no one else is going to beat your drum. Like, you need to kind of get out there and follow your nose and follow an opportunity. And a lot of it is people focused. I guess I'm in a people sector, but, I remember doing that trip, and that was it kind of made sense because I was kind of in that, thinking about that, and had international candidates in, and I was from Australia, so I knew I'd come back eventually. And there was actually someone who I will mention, James Gross, who from BVN, who was over in the UK, and they needed people. So we were helping them with the Athletes Village team, and they were doing a JV with one of the UK practices as well. So he was over, and I said, this is, he cottoned onto us on that side, but I also was doing, had been to see BVN when I'd been in Sydney, and he's like, oh, you absolutely, there's no one doing it there, Krista, you should absolutely open an office there. And I just remember thinking, oh, well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to absolutely do it. It's not a crazy idea.
Yeah, right. So, because that
was it.
That's exactly sort of where I wanted to start with the call today, because you graduated from architecture. You work as, like back in the day, you worked as an architect, and then you jumped tracks from working on the tools to working in recruitment. Like, what lured you across?
So I did my degree, and I always wanted to be an architect since I was a little girl growing up on a farm in the middle of nowhere. And my mum was from the city. I don't know, I was thinking about it before we did the call, and I think I love the idea of buildings and cities, and maybe I always loved drawing it when I was little because it was so opposite to where I was in the middle of a wheat and sheep farm, miles from anywhere, 45 minutes from a small town. So it was probably, I don't know what it was, but I always wanted to be an architect. So it wasn't, I kind of, went through school and was like, I want to be an architect. Did my work experience in architecture practice in Sydney. My mum was, from here, said that was easy. And then I went to uni in Sydney. I went to Sydney University, and then I got a job in Sydney via fax. I think I'll throw that in there. I don't know whether you got a job via fax, but it was in the Sydney Morning Herald.
Yes. Oh, how glorious.
And I faxed my CV, and then someone called me because there was no email.
And someone picked up the landline.
Like, what is a fax? Then worked as an architect, went to London because I wanted to, spread my wings. Tried that, and I just wasn't quite, when you think I've got an itch, but I'm not quite scratching it. This is not, even though I'd always wanted to be an architect. So it's kind of like, I just thought this is not the end. So I traveled, and I thought I'll go get a job in a really big firm, because I'd worked in a really small firm and had great experience. I stayed there for 3 or so years, I think, really good tenure. Got over there, and it was really busy in London. So it was like, we used to always joke 2 feet in a heartbeat. You could get a job because it was just so busy when I got there. So I think I had 6 job offers, and there were, it was through a recruiter, which I'd never even heard of what that was before. Anyway, so I took a job, and there we went. And I just, I think I was there for a year, and I was like, on these big education projects. It was that real time where architects did all the things that hopefully they're not doing anymore. And we worked till 2 a.m. on a deadline. It was, I was really in the thick of that, in the buzzing life of London, which was, there was a lot of excitement about that because the projects were great. I was in a big American firm in the UK. There was 160 people in the firm. So, there'd be events, and you wouldn't know everyone's name. Like, it was just so opposite, and it was so fun. Like, I really enjoyed that experience, but I didn't like the job. So I just got to the point where I think, for wellness reasons, I guess, to summarize it, and my own drive, I'd always worked in hospitality through university. So I actually worked in bars when I was at uni and at college, and there was a group of us, and we had so much fun. And then when I was an architect, I kept working in this small cocktail cigar bar that I loved, and we had a really good tight group of friends that worked there. And so I do that on the Saturdays and Sundays. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to quit this job in London. Didn't have a plan, and then I'll get a job in a pub and figure out what I want to do, because I can't burn myself. I was working till 2. I kind of was just knew that my alarm bells were going off. This is not right. So I think maybe that's a lesson because I was like, no, I kind of just thought, oh, I've got other stuff I can do. I don't have to follow this career that everyone says is amazing. And I just, I kind of resigned. And then this thing arrived on my desk on a Friday called the BD magazine. So anyone who's watching who worked in London, and it was a hard copy sort of magazine, building design magazine in London, and they at the back were the jobs because we're still in the day where there's no internet jobs that anyone's searching, no platforms. So it was in the back and it said, fancy a career change, and it was only to architects, and I was like, yes. And I was like, oh, this company Bespoke, fabulous, this looks good. And I sent an email to Lindsay, or it might be Jimmy, who's still with us in the UK. And they said, yeah, they called me straight away and said, looks great. And I can see you've worked in hospitality. You'll love it. And I was like, okay. They said, come and have an interview, and then and so I went and had an interview in Clerkenwell. I Googled recruitment before I went there because I was like, what is this? And what is it? So I spoke to a few people and I thought, this sounds fun. And she was pregnant. Lindsay was very pregnant. Said, I have another wedding in Australia. She said, oh, you have to start in 2 weeks. And I said, I've got a wedding in Australia. And she said, well, I'm about to have a baby and I really need someone, like that's the job. And I was like, okay. So that's probably another bit of advice. Sometimes you need to prioritise the opportunity ahead of you over your personal things that are in your plan. Like I had to just go, okay. And I just did. I said, the door's open. I went through. And then I just started and loved it. Like I just thought, oh my goodness. She said, see this list of architects, because they were all architects. Bespoke said, I employ architects to do the recruitment. She'd set up the whole agency on that model. So I guess, that was the whole ethos. We knew what we were looking at. And she said, see this list of people, here's the job, see which ones of them you think look like they've got the right skills to do the job, and then call. And so you just call, work through. I mean, it's actually hard graft, but, I loved it. I was like, this is amazing, talking to these people. I know what I'm looking at. And then, you're matchmaking. So that kind of just was like a duck to water. I loved it.
Yeah, I think what, even just with doing this podcast, what I've loved doing is speaking to people who work in the design industry as opposed to speaking to, because when you think design, you just think of the job title, not like, accountants are creative, too creative, and they go to jail. But, like chefs writing menus, that's creative. Working, like you don't have to be, I completely understand what you mean, because you're creating your professional matchmaking is absolutely what you're doing. Still working in the industry, but it's an adjacent role or an adjacent kind of profession. And so I can completely understand that, because I think we kind of get stars in our eyes of what we imagine this job role is going to look like. And then, and so, glamour is making the unglamorous look glamorous, and working till 2 a.m. Being an architect sounds glamorous. Working till 2 a.m. not so much.
Exactly. So I think I don't know. I think listen to yourself, and I think one thing I'd always say to people is, if you're not happy, keep moving, because you will find happiness. And don't be afraid. Like, you have to be bold, and you have to say, I'm not sure what I'll do, and you have to also have no ego in it. So obviously, recruiters might have a bad name. Working in hospitality might not be everyone's dream, and coming from architecture, but they were things that I was like, I'm going to go and do that until I find something. And then the other thing popped up. And so, I don't know, I think that's probably another thing if I reflect. I was probably also blissfully unaware. I think I was,
Didn't know what you didn't know.
Those journeys. Exactly. If I'd known all of the hurdles and how hard it is to get to where in a business today, and all of the challenges I've had, you might just go, if you read it all, on a menu, you'd probably go, oh, that doesn't sound good. I won't have that name. Maybe I would, though, because it's been such a fun ride and I still love it.
Yeah, you do. And that certainly comes through in spades. I've always thought that. And yeah, just the context of how Krista and I know each other is many moons ago, when Chris and I first moved to Sydney in 2010, Chris was working at his old work, and I think they started using you for recruitment maybe around 2010, 2011. So it's been, 15 years ago-ish. Yeah, now paths have kind of crossed paths, and I've enjoyed watching Bespoke's growth. I mean, Bespoke's always been international, but I can see each office as it pops up and meeting more of the team. And I know you've had some, I mean, I assume you've got to walk the talk, but you've also had some really long-term staff in your team as well. Like you've got Hannah. James is over in the US.
James is in Austin. He's the one that's headed that up. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. So we've got quite a lot of people from Sydney have gone and to other places. But also, I think one of the big, that's something else I'd say too, is like looking after your people and, from the heart, because I think if you work with good people, keep that going. And I think, I worked for Lindsay, and that's how I met Jimmy a really long time ago. He's still with us in the UK. And so the whole journey's been really wonderful for me because I love working with those people, and I'm so lucky to have had such a wonderful journey with my business partner, with Lindsay as well.
Yeah, it's gone well. So with working, if we purely look at it from architecture to recruitment, is there anything that you think one profession could learn from the other?
Yeah, and I think probably what we just touched on, it's probably the people understanding, from this side of the, going behind that sort of stage curtain and seeing what you see within businesses, because you kind of see all of the structure, what things really are strong foundations, things that can really put people off the rails. And I think in recruitment, we're all about people and we're all about relationships. And I think in any of those sort of businesses, doing the right thing by your clients, providing that service the best way you can, and in being honest, if things don't go the right way, I think they're all things that they're probably integrity and things that underpin any good business. I think because in architecture, you definitely still, and interior design and all of these design sort of built environment, you're very much, if you're not doing the construction, you're very much a design service, and often very front end with what you're providing, and you might follow it through as well. So there's that side, but I think the other side is very much down to the skills of the team that you've got. So you really need to nurture them and to attract the best people, which I think it's a challenge for everyone. I mean, you guys are also dealing with that every day too, like getting the right people and then wanting to come and work for you. That's the other half of it too. So it's you've got to be kind of nurturing that the current flow of the skills you've got to take to market, the team you've got, and bringing new people in and having that kind of nurturing your sector enough that people know that you're a good brand and it's a good place to work and that they want to stay there once they start. Or you can elevate them and send them on another journey as well. That's also a great thing to do for people. They don't have to stay forever. But yeah, I think looking after people, people first.
Yeah. So just jumping across to the design industry in general, I think you sit in a pretty amazing position because you can see locally what's happening in Australia, and then you also see international, like what's happening, especially with like hiring trends. With your experience, are you seeing anything between like full-time, part-time, freelance? What are the biggest shifts you're seeing recruitment, employment-wise in the industry?
Yeah, so I think in Australia, definitely, and in the UK, there's been a huge spike, probably since last August, in contractors going up. So people, that's normally for a short-term project, or it could be ongoing for a longer period, because they're sort of, I think the markets have been tough over the last few years, and it has picked up. Like, it's definitely a busier market now than it was 18 months ago in terms of workflow coming through. Everyone seems busy, everyone's hiring, but they're hiring in a different way. So I think they've sort of been burnt by that period where they had to make, if we're going back 24 months to 36 months, there were redundancies. And I think, looking at balance sheets, people are thinking, okay, let's do it differently this time. So we've seen at least 50% increase in Sydney. And I think probably the UK, that's the same, maybe less in Brisbane and Melbourne, but still, up 25% at least across the board.
Of employment, like of available roles.
For casual contractor people who are filling in a timesheet. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably the biggest shift in hiring.
Yeah.
And it means people can, resource a project that way, or they can, if they're not sure if someone's got the right skill fit, they can see say, let's give it a couple of months and then we can talk about committing further.
Yeah, I think one of the, and what you touched on before between architecture and recruitment is one thing, because so my background is marketing communications, and so the more kind of that hospitality side is one thing I didn't factor in is running a team of designers. It's just a different personality group, and all designers are different. So you've got like the industrial designers, they're like creative engineers, their like interactions work differently to web designers, graphic designers, interior designers. So I think I can understand as well, like sometimes you're hiring on skill set, but then sometimes you're hiring on, do I want to have a coffee with this person?
100%. Yeah, all of those things. And I think that's probably, like you're mentioning it there, like when people don't fit into 100%, when you write a job description, as you'd kind of look at it and go, I want this, 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 this. And, we'll often be educating our clients. And it's so nice to hear you say that, because you'll say, well, they've got all of these things, but they've also got these things that you didn't ask for, which are great, which could be really complementary, or there might be a cultural addition, because you can't really tick boxes with people. People are dynamic, and people are, but if you have that team structure and you can have that sort of oversight for a business, I think that's probably the best way to look at, your hiring strategy. Like you said, like how is it, it can be made up. There's a place for everyone as well, I would say. So, whatever you are, there's a perfect place for you in the workplace. Like if you're very technical, you might be that person in the corner that just nails all the details. Or, some people now, they might be, I've never used CAD, and they might be coming to the end of their working years, but we've got amazing QA roles for people that don't need to use CAD, because they can do all the red markups. Like there's lots of, I think sometimes we have roles, I think, we never thought that role would exist, and then there it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how the market evolves and adapts to that. It's never a static market.
Yeah.
It's why it shocks me when people say things are changing. I'm like, that's the guarantee in life. Things only change. That's the one certainty, is uncertainty.
Yeah. And if you're not going forwards, you're going backwards.
Yeah. Feels it.
Yeah.
And then with like working locally and internationally, are teams overseas, like are companies overseas or here, are people looking to recruit internationally, like companies to bring people across?
Yeah. And so this is surprising. So I went to New York in November, and I thought, I'll go and see Damien, who's got a great landscape firm there and worked with my partner years ago in Hassel. And anyway, he's set up over there, and I said, I'll go and catch up with him. I got there, and there was, they needed lots of people. I mean, it was like, and he, finding what he wanted in the market, and he was happy to look here. So we actually did a whole recruitment drive looking for people from Australia, and we've had several roles for practices that have got offices here and there, and they are desperate for people to move to New York. And I'm not sure if I guess they can't find what they need locally, because it isn't, 100% straight. It's, some of the visas are actually not too onerous to get, but we've had a few of those. I can think of two really big recruitment drives from New York, from people from Australia, particularly, and then going the other way, we're placing heaps and heaps of New Zealanders, Kiwis. We just love them in Australia. They've got great technical skills. Lots of them are Revit users, which is our favourite platform as well in Australia at the moment. So I feel like a lot of them are coming from New Zealand and then coming into Sydney or to Brisbane. I'm not sure if it's less to Melbourne, and I was thinking about maybe it's the weather. Is it something that's similar weather to them? I don't know, and they want something a bit warmer. But yeah, the Kiwis, we love placing the Kiwis. And yeah, so I think that, and the UK, I mean, we're always still that sort of that line is still very much in motion, people moving this way and coming back that way. And we've got constant, so between our businesses, we have a global database. So we've got 150,000 on there now. So we'll post to our team that's another thing that's great about Bespoke, which makes it really interesting working here, or for candidates that want to move, or clients that want to hire in other places. Like we can kind of tap into that global reach, which, it is quite unique. So if people, when I first set up here, actually, the project I was working on was when Roger Sturt Harbour, they were one of my first clients. They were doing Barangaroo Towers, and they needed people here. So, they were very much like, right, who are we going to get? So they wanted, certain facade specialists in certain things. And so that's what I was working on, because they knew us from the UK, and there wasn't anyone else here that could provide that level. People are moving around all the time, and specialists, I mean, if you really, if anyone's listening, if you want to be a specialist who move, there's always the rail architects, the health architects, the medical planners. Whenever there's big, government spending in different countries, you could probably go wherever you wanted. Like they're really hard to find, medical planners. And I've, originally from the UK, when I was bringing people over, that's what we were bringing over, was health specialist architects, because the UK systems were quite similar, and it was great bringing that expertise into the market here. So a lot of the people we, placed from the UK in the very, very beginning with really sort of those niche, deep specialists, yeah.
Yeah, it makes our industry and our output so much better when we can collaborate as much with people from overseas and bring their experience in. I was hoping Australia would do more of it. Like we're always stronger for it.
Yeah.
So with like in the Australian market, you're the conduit obviously between, candidates and the employers. What profession are you seeing, or profession or division of a profession are you most seeing the demand for at the moment?
Yeah, so I think the sweet spot is probably people that are still, if you're senior with good experience and depth in a certain, in your sector or whatever your specialty is, and you still can use all the tools, those people are really, I wouldn't really call it a digital native, but people that can still draft, they're all rounders, they can deal with clients. That person is in demand across architecture and interiors, landscape, urban. That's probably we place all kinds of roles. So we've obviously got lots of different roles going on, but that's probably the most in demand. Someone who's senior, but still very much engaged in producing and understands that, because then they can, jump in and do stuff, but also then direct teams who are doing things, and it's to have that sort of that tech, component that they're still sort of really up with. Yeah. I think things are changing a lot in that space too. So they sort of need to be well versed with, what different platforms people are using for designing. Like there's a lot of change at the moment with how they're designing at senior levels, and a lot of them are using really amazing programs that make, they cut time for junior teams putting stuff together. So I think those kind of people who are really engaged in technology and have the design experience, that's a bit of a sweet spot at the moment.
The general purpose all rounder. I almost feel like they're the stuff of urban legend, the unicorn.
Yeah. I think that's probably we are getting, and I know that AI is in all of the practices now, and people are really uptaking it. And it might be in the form of, they probably started off with some sort of note taking, but in design firms, they're really uptaking it now in lots of different ways. So we've had a few roles now coming in, and they've got different. I couldn't tell you what the title will end up being. Digital specialists, and they are people that are working across all the different kind of platforms of tech within a business, but understanding the design ones. So they're probably coming from a design background originally, and then they've kind of gone down that funnel. So I think if you're passionate about AI or tech, or you've got some unique skills, every firm will be hiring you soon. We've got most firms are now like, oh, if you have anyone with this skill set, because they're watching other people implement and do, and if they haven't got that skill set internally, they're kind of to nurture up, and they're really looking to market. So we've had quite a few of those coming in lately, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think for us, the biggest benefit or the most exciting thing about AI creatively is, or what I'm imagining, what I'm forecasting, because using AI, it is like the client's revenge on the customer, because you have to be an advanced brief writer. And, when you get the brief, sometimes the brief is like a torn envelope, a pair of dice, and make it Milo, but not Milo. Or so, the brief can be so obscure. So and we know the client really well. So we're like, okay, we know that this is symbolic of that. And when they're, because we're people readers. But then when you go to use AI, you have to, it's all about the brief. So I think
you have to brief the AI.
I think languages, AI will be one of them, because you'll have to know, it's getting it's like going to the supermarket, all the ingredients for the souffle is in there. You just, it's getting it out. That's the key. I reckon that's going to is how well you can, like how art directors, creative directors, design directors, if they're worth their salt, should be off to the races, I think, with AI creatively. That said, if you ain't got a vision, AI is just going to be like an echo to Narcissus and just tell you how great you are, and you're going to agree, and it's going to agree, and you're going to agree, and round and round and round you go.
And then round we go.
That's my bold forecast.
So the critical thinking and the creative designers, the true creative, they need to be able to brief it so that we don't end up in that nasty funnel.
Yeah, and that's
where everything's the same.
Homogenization of design, and it started. I bang on about this, but once we got onto Pinterest and Insta, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that's now we're seeing the homogenization, because what we're seeing the latest in Spain, we're seeing it overnight, and so everything for everyone.
Everything's looking the same globally.
And if we talk about two different candidates, there's graduate candidates and then there's established candidates. What advice do you have for graduates entering who want a job in design?
Do your research always, like for everybody. Like I think do your research of where you'd like to apply, but then, like I said earlier, I think if a door opens, go through it, because you will learn something when you're a graduate in any job that you take first. And ideally, if you stick at the tenure, it'll teach you all of the things that you need to know about working in a business or in a commercial environment and getting on with people. It's not really at that. It doesn't matter if the design's not everything you ever wanted it to be, or it's not the right sector, because you can cross between those. I think when you're a graduate, what you really need to do is get into it and learn how to be within a business and helping within a team and absorbing. And I guess if you can find someone that is a great mentor, that you look up to and that you think, I want to be like that, one day, or that's got there's lots of things about that person or about that business that I'd love to learn about. And I think that's, it's a journey. It doesn't need to be, I think that's probably it doesn't need to be, working for a famous architect straight away. You've got so much to learn, and everything that you learn in that first job, you'll be like, wow. I remember my first job, it was like, it wasn't glamorous, it was aged care, but I loved it and I learned so much and I loved the people, and it was really interesting, even though, it wasn't glamorous, like it wasn't residential, or something, that I thought I'd be doing.
Yeah, that's a great point. You don't want to peak at your first job and be your least experienced self in your dream job, because it's not a good look.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but I didn't want to peak too early. That's the strategy.
I think that being a parent, I think that all the time people brag about like the 7-year-old's prowess around the monkey bars. I'm like, dude, you don't want to peak at 7. The road is long.
It is long. Hold something back. Hold it back.
Yeah. Save yourself. And then conversely, what advice would you have for candidates who are up to their 10th job or their 10th year or their 20th year in the biz?
Well, I think we see a lot of them, and we've got a really experienced team. So, I mean, Misty would be amazing for anyone at that level to talk to. Or we've got Prue in here as well on the interiors side. It's a deep conversation at that point if you're thinking about moving, and they're not conversations that might happen. It's really hard to build your team at that level and to add in, that strategic kind of next hire. As you would know, it's a big investment, and it needs to be the right match, because you're so deep with your specialties by then, and what people are offering, that it all needs to line up. So it might be a conversation that happens over 5 years that we're having with people, because they'll say, I think my next move might be this. I'm really, and that's okay. That's kind of what we're here for as well. But I think maybe, just making sure that if you're not really letting your wings fly and you're into your mid career and you're not a graduate and you've got good experience, then I'd make sure you kind of keep moving until you find what really makes you sing, because this is it. This is not a dress rehearsal, and you spend so much time at work, and I think you need to be happy, do what makes you happy. And I think that's kind of the other thing I would say. I think, yeah, it's a lot. It needs to be more considered once you're into roles and have experience, and hopefully people, when they've got to that point, they've already done that soul searching, so they are really dedicated and passionate, and they love their career. But I think, like I said before, there's all these roles that you think you wouldn't have even heard of them or thought of them, and they pop up in here. I'd like someone who could maybe, if they wanted to live between Byron and, sometimes we get really strange things or location requests, and you just never know. There might be the other person on the other side of the world somewhere saying, I've got what you're looking for.
Yeah, I love that.
There's something for everyone.
Niche for niche.
And that's, I think that's kind of one of the best things about our database, is that we can tag it all up, and, because it's hard to remember that, but we can then go in and search for the words of or the town or the place or the specific, if someone needs someone to speak a language. Or we had a great project where we placed someone and they were going to be working on a UN sort of embassy over in Africa, and it was so interesting, the whole process. And they were like, oh, it's going to be really hard to find someone. We're like, oh yeah, that's what we're here for. We love that. So we had to get security clearances. There were bodyguard allowances in the salary remuneration. There were flights here. It was all very, very interesting. And there's, that woman, the woman who took the job had been wanting to do something a bit like that. She's had a great career. So she was kind of needed something that was head turning to work on and really get into. So she was thrilled too.
I just also imagining your inbox, like the dopamine hit you must get every morning when the briefs come in, because you see who's doing what before it happens in the market.
Yeah. Well, it's actually funny because we've now got a thing on the website which people can upload a brief. So if you're at night time going, oh God, we've got this deadline, you can just go onto our website and go, I need this. You don't even need to talk to anyone really. You can write a detailed brief if you're just so busy. Obviously, we'd love to see our people face to face, but you can just kind of dump it there, and then we'll go, okay, great. We'll call you and go, okay, we're onto it in the morning. And yeah, so it is quite exciting. You do come in like, oh, this looks interesting. Oh yes, or people you haven't even spoken to before, like really interesting businesses that are, looking for someone to look after their property portfolio. Or, we get some very interesting requests coming through.
Yeah.
It can be very fun.
Yeah, that's so cool. I was just, we had a graduate in here the other day who was just sort of asking us to review her folio for her and help her out. And she was talking about what kind of role, and, she has a background in marketing and she wants to work in residential or hospitality interiors. And I was saying, like, you might be able to find a private family who are loaded, who have a portfolio that just constantly needs updating around the world. Like, you don't know what you don't know. Dream a bigger dream.
Yeah, totally. There's businesses that you hear about, and I know a friend worked for one in the US, and it was like they did end to end. And I think there's probably ones here, you probably know more about this on your retail side, but they were hospitality, coming up with whole, the investor would come and say, we want to do a restaurant here, and they'd come up with the whole concept, end to end, the menus, everything, and then they'd staff it. I was like, oh. She was a girl I went to university with in Sydney, actually. So, like, that's what she's doing. Like, people have some very different journeys, and it's not always from having a linear path. I think be happy to wander off, and if something pops up, try it. You can never make a wrong decision, really.
Totally. And I think, everyone's kind of a bit scared to present as scattered, but like with their resume and their experience. But like for us, when we're looking to hire someone, I basically insist they had to have had a shit job. Like ideally they've worked in fast food, a cleaner, a waitress, like a hard shit job.
Yeah.
And the skills they bring, the tenacity, the endurance, once you've eaten a shit sandwich, you're like, thanks, that was great. I don't want to do that again. The appreciation you have, but also the skill set, like you've learned, how to deal with drunk patrons, or you've learned all of that, all those side skills.
Yeah, and I think that's why Lindsay originally said, oh, you've worked in hospitality. Oh, you're going to love it. Because I really enjoyed hospitality because all the different people you would meet and a problem customer, like none of it would, but that's actually what it is actually in business, as, you would know too with your, you're dealing with different people and you've got to be able to get on with them and find the path.
Yeah, it's a balance. It's just an absolute, like, it's like being a maestro of an orchestra. Like you've got the creativity and the delivery is one thing. And especially outsiders who don't work in our industry at all, like when we talk to finance and business people, they think our biggest challenge is being creative or the ideas. I'm like, dude, God, the idea, that's the easy peasy. It's thereafter, making it come alive, selling it in, satisfying the brief, the stakeholders, the challenges, the budgets, timelines. The idea is the least of your worries.
I'm exhausted already. That's
the all day I could do the ideas and the creativity. It's the rest of it that's the nugget. That's why when a big project gets up or gets completed, I just think they deserve, I don't care if it's a ball bearing factory or like, whatever. Like I'm just like, you got it through, like, getting it created.
You did it. I completely agree. Like executing it, ideas are easy in some ways, but executing it and making it, commercial too, like doing it so that you're not going forever on the design and a vanity project, keeping it moving is and I've had some great moments actually because I love watching this and because we're lucky, we're agency side, so we're in the business of, we're very project focused, but when we deal with a client who is especially big client, those meetings where everyone's too conservative to commit to something, and we had a meeting recently, a big international meeting, like everyone's on Zoom. We had people in Spain dialing in, people in Poland dialing in, people in France and Australia and Hong Kong. It's a big, and so we're doing this feedback, circles and circles, and everyone's kind of dancing around some point. No one really wants to commit to this one design detail. And then one of the big bosses from France just comes in, calls it, steady hand, calls it, decides, and tells the whole meeting to move on. And I was like, oh, Jesus, take the wheel. It was so lovely to have that steady hand back, because I feel like, in these conservative times, we've kind of, everyone's so nervous about making the wrong decision that it made, I felt like it was the olden days, which, business has definitely moved on since then. But this guy was like this old, wise head on steady shoulders.
I've missed him.
Good. You've missed
I've
him. He's
missed
back.
him.
You're like, can you please join every one of my meetings at about 20 minutes in?
Totally. It was like a ballast. So with employers, what are because you would see teams that are happy. I know you specialize also in placing long-term, candidates that end up becoming long-term
Oh, yeah.
employees. What
Yeah.
are you seeing that they're doing that's creating these happy teams?
So our contract is, probably 15-ish to 20-ish% of what we place. So that's, and so the rest is permanent people. So then it's, you're really committing, and we get to know a lot about our clients because we really need to understand that when someone's thinking it's a big decision, moving jobs, and we never ever take that lightly. Like, big things you do in your own private world are, jobs, where you live, marriage, kids, all of those kind of big core things for someone. So, they do need to kind of match and have the right expectations, and it all needs to be laid out at the beginning. I think people that do it well, it's probably, they've got to have really good, even if you're a small business, like great structures around your employee check-ins, and that's all your HR stuff. So your salary reviews, your performance reviews, everything that's a pattern, so people know what's coming and they expect it. People love that. They love being reassured by, knowing what's ahead. Like, they love that in the workplace. Don't like surprises. It's kind of like, this is how it works here. This is our annual planner and how we do it. And they also like a really clear pathway for progression. I think that's, key as well, because if someone's coming in and committing, they also are thinking individually, they want commercial success for business, but they're also thinking, where am I going on my journey? And I think, there's a place for everyone, and everyone is on a journey. And some people might say, oh, you know what, I'm not really wanting to have any growth or change because I'm focusing on something in my private life, or I'm running a marathon next year, or whatever it might be, and I'm going to be training every spare minute. So I just need this to be really the same for a year. Or, they might, it's okay if it's, someone who's driven, who wants to take over the world, or someone who's, thinking, I just want something that's really steady and no change for a while, and I don't want to progress. I don't want to do any team management. They're all good things, but I think all of those conversations need to be had so that everyone knows that they're on the same page and where they're heading. I think that's probably a big one. All of the other stuff, people need to have it in their bag because of, psychosocial safety, and I think your remuneration needs to be in line. Like, we've just done the market report. So if you want to find out more about all of that stuff, I think we just did a webinar a few weeks ago, but there's a list in here, and it used to be salary wasn't at the top of what was making people move, but yet it's back at the top again, because I think maybe we've looked after all of the other things, but people are still looking for, work-life balance, flexibility, salary, projects, career progression. They're all the things that you'd imagine in here. But we kind of go through them from the survey. It lists them, so you can really deep dive. So if you are someone who's hiring, that's probably a really good one to read. I mean, the salary guide's got you a quick flick of what pay people should be kind of on in terms of the market. And then there's always people who are standing outside of the market though too, I would say, as well. But then the market report kind of deep dives into what people are actually saying, I'm happy, I'm unhappy. I think people are almost as happy as they were the year before in Sydney. Melbourne, they dipped down a bit. And in Brisbane, they're a bit happier this year, people who filled out the survey. And I think that's probably because they've got the Olympics coming. And I think that's probably driven, like, their market has picked up. People are it's still happening, right now. I guess what month are we into? May. They're peppering out the announcement of projects. So there's a lot of good news happening up there. And I think that filters down into businesses. So, that kind of underlying kind of, economic thrust or change in a city is really kind of exciting in our sector. I think that kind of must be, because I think they've gone up 5% or something. Whereas normally how happy people are in the market, the wellness thing is kind of normally quite stable unless something really bad's happening or something really good.
Yeah, and in this just bigger social setting, it's so easy to be harangued into feeling a bit squashed and depressed because of the sound bites of, we're all going to hell, the world's awful, blah, blah, blah. And there's yada, yada, yada. And then, the reality is the opposite is a little bit true. Like, we've never lived so long, never looked so good, never had so much. And so I can understand that takes its toll on all team members, whether they're the business owner or they work in the business, because you're fighting against that. Like, certainly, we work in retail design and we hear, at least once a week, people are like, but retail's dead, everything's online. I'm like, kind of, except 90% of the world's retail is done at bricks and mortar. And also, we're not looking to get every store. So, like, we're okay.
Yeah.
And if you look at LV, there's still queues out the front. Like, people still do shop in shops.
100%.
But yeah, so you hear those sound bites and stuff. So I suppose a part of it as well is protecting the team. And then you mentioned this term, psychosocial safety. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yes. So Marilyn Spicer gave us a great update a couple of years ago when the legislation came in, and basically it overarches everything about someone's well-being in the workplace. So it can be them going on site and having interactions with a contractor who's not doing things the right way. That could affect their well-being, or it could be the comfort of the work environment. So down to, I guess how they sit in the environment. So physical things, and it could be the way someone treats them in the workplace. So they're kind of all of the things. I mean, there's a big long list of them. So I think if you're not across that, I would, Marilyn's from Catalina and they're fantastic. And I know I saw you the other day when she did her update. So we'll invite people along and she kind of just summarizes it. But basically, it's about having a safe workplace for it's sort of workplace health and safety to another level and really looking after people's well-being. So I think that legislation coming in, I can't remember when it was, maybe it's a year or two ago. And I think people have had to really look at it because it's a huge liability if something isn't how it should be. And mainly for the commercial, for the client, for the person who owns the business. But most importantly, if stuff's happening in a workplace that's not right, the damage on someone, it's that 100%. It's so good that we have that now. And I know I've worked through all the days where we didn't have it. We're back on the faxes. But, it's great to see that change. I think, the workplace is better than it was, I think.
1,000,000%. Like
Hallelujah.
The friendly terms of, he's pretty handsy.
Oh.
Yeah, which is, code for non-consensual groping. Yeah, things like that. Like, I think about it, Chris and I reminisce about this all the time and like how rough and wild the workplace used to be for an employee. And all the emphasis was on you. It was up to you to make yourself safe.
To remove yourself.
Yeah, and be a team player at the same time. Like it was a real keepings off the bottom rung, dog eat dog world. It's way better now, I think.
Yeah, 100%. So I think, it's better for all of us because it's been great. I mean, I really enjoy those updates because obviously I'm an architect. I'm, deeply in recruitment, but I'm not an HR specialist. I kind of, we become very fluid in it. But that's, it's really good to hear the cases and understand how, and it's really important if you're in the workplace or, one other thing, you want everyone to be really happy in the workplace. Like I love coming in and everyone's happy in our office. Like that just makes me so happy. And I always say to them I want everyone to be really happy in here. So come and tell me if you've got any ideas that will make, anyone happier here. So we, surprise and delight. What else have we got?
It always works. Anytime I cross paths with any of your team members, yourself included, I always feel like you guys always turn up and turn it out. Like you practice what you preach.
Yeah, we do. And we kind of spend time in our, setting what we're pegging against. We want to be the best at what we can do, but also we want to have fun and we want to enjoy it. And what can we do? Or, how can we do it as a team? And so we'll have team things that we work towards, like, it might be a trip or a fun thing or, we have a really good work culture, I think, because of that. And it's fun. It sounds so cheesy, me saying it, doesn't it?
No.
It's so fun here. I promise.
It's like a pool party.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think all of that stuff is, I think this, anyway, so I think people are back onto salary now. They just want to make sure they're paid the right way. Inflation's up and maybe people are looking after them better in the workplace.
Yeah. So with all of your experience in the industry, and if we focus in on the art of employment, what bad habits do you think candidates have had traditionally that you would love to never see again?
Oh, researching where you're going, like knowing who you're going to meet with when you go for an interview. I mean, that front end kind of just, really showing up. Like if you want someone to consider employing you, that's a big deal as well. Like it's a big deal for you, but it's a really big deal for them. So I think make sure you've looked at the website, you know where you're going, you know what sectors they do, who you're meeting, deep dive on that. I think that's really, one thing that I'd say. And on the flip side of that, I would say for clients, that they should really make sure in that interview that, you know, probably some of the worst stories I've heard from candidates coming out is that they went to the interview and they were in the room and they think maybe they were forgotten, and then one person came in and then the director they were meant to meet with had another meeting, so they kind of looked at some stuff and then, you know, wandered off. You know, I've heard these stories where someone's had 3 or 4 people wander in and out of a meeting room and then think, oh, I'm going to offer them the job at the end. And you're thinking that candidate is like, wow, I can't possibly work here. Like, I don't even know what they're all kind of swanning through and not giving me, you know, a proper moment of their time. So I think that you're, you know, remembering that you're all kind of trying to get to that meeting and make it the best that it can be. For the clients, you need to be they go and they talk with their friends at the pub. I went into this practice. It's kind of the first time they get to have that, you know, behind the curtain, what's going on in there. A lot of people just see awards or, you know, so it's really your front face into the market. So make the most of it. It's really competitive to get the best people. If you want the best people, you know, have a plan, have a really good diverse interview panel.
Oh, that's great. Interview. Yeah, I love that. And it echoes the same sentiment I've found as well. Like, I've done lots of talks to interior design graduates through unis about what to expect, what the employer is expecting. But one of the pieces of advice, the same thing I give as well, is one, of course, research. And it shocks the shit out of me when people turn up and they've done no research. I'm like, you have Google. We had like Encyclopedia Britannica. I think photocopies of Encyclopedia.
The newspaper.
Exactly, at best. You had gossip over a fence of like, do you know anything about? There was that. So your research, absolutely. But yeah, I also say to graduates, like, secretly, quietly, you're interviewing them as well. So if you see like dust bunnies in the corner, old post packs at the front door, and staff are walking over them, like, you know, and to get to their desk. If you walk into somewhere and no one pops their head up to say hello, these are all, you know, culturally, do you feel like you're going to fit there? Same. And some employers do it on purpose as well, I think. But, you know, I prep them as well. I'm like, they might have your interview in a noisy cafe, and you know, and so, you know, is your iPad charged? Make sure that you've got a printed folio because you don't want to be tech dependent. But, you know, it's going to be noisy. So are you ready for that? Like, they could put you, I said they could put you into a boardroom and be like, and beam up your portfolio up onto the big screen. And it's a part of the ring of fire of the interviewing as well.
Yeah, and that meet and greet, I'd probably say too, one final point for practices. Like, how many times do you go into a building and you kind of walk in and you say, I don't know if it's just me, but I often like, hi, oh, hi. And you're like waving over at someone who's deep in a CAD drawing and they're kind of going, and they're like, who are you? Because no one's told them you're coming. But, you know, having someone like that's facing the door and it's their job, that even if they're not, you know, even if there's there doesn't need to be a reception, but just someone who's like, okay, your job this week is meeting and greeting, and then we're going to rotate it or something, so that there's someone with a smiley face going, oh my gosh, we know we're expecting you. I can see the calendar. Have a seat. Would you like a water? Just something.
Yeah, anything.
Instead of yelling through the cabin. Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, it is the worst. And that's what also I like advise graduates to do as well. I'm like, if you're working somewhere and someone is at the front door, go and introduce yourself, say hello, sit them down, get them water, you'll work it out. Yeah. I said, you don't know who they are. They could be like, I don't know if she's still alive, Peggy Guggenheim. Like, they could be, you know, the person you want to be friends with. Like, say hello. That's the best spot you can be, is by the front door.
100%, every interaction. Yeah.
Yeah, you can spot the hospitality people. So you talked about it before with the careers salary guide that comes out annually, and it covers the UK, the US, NZ and AU. How do you find the market receives it from candidate side to employer side?
So normally, I mean, we go out and we say fill in the survey. So we get candidates and we get clients, like quite a lot of clients fill it out too. And, you know, surprisingly too, also in the last sort of 12 months, I've had a lot of, you know, directors I've known for a long time ringing me about their packages, and people, you know, there's no limit to people thinking about what their remuneration is. Like junior people, the most senior person, the CEO, everyone wants to know. But we basically, it's all anonymous and it goes in and then it gets collated. And then once we've got the data, we'll then release it to the people who are business owners. So we'll go and have meetings with our clients and talk to them about what we've seen, you know, just so they've got time as well to look at it, because obviously when we release it out to candidates, we know that lots of them then say, oh, yeah, we know you guys out, because we've had 10 meetings this week where they come in, they're like, we'd like to sit down and have a chat. And so we do that so that, but it is a really good resource and it is factual. Like it's, people are filling it in, like all of the, and the market report feels, we ask a lot of other questions to kind of get a really good market touch point across the different cities. And so that comes out in the market report so that people can, deep dive into whatever it is they need to delve into, or if they think they've got a problem, that kind of sharing that sort of data, I think in our sector is so important because it just elevates everyone. So we love doing it. It's quite fun.
Yeah, I know it's certainly for us, it's affected our reviews with the staff, depending on what time. We almost want to peg the reviews around the timing of the release. Machiavellian.
Yeah.
And just before we wrap up, I mean, we did touch on AI, and it's almost like I'm this close to getting a T-shirt that says, "I get it, you love it," or "I get it, you don't." Like, because it's so polarizing and it's such a soundbite with AI. But in terms of the design industry, it's huge. So, who's leading the charge more? Do you think of the uptake? Is it companies or candidates or graduates?
I'd say that there's a few trailblazers who have been deep into tech, and they sort of, the names that I see, I'm like, oh, I first met them at the Revit Technology Conference, 18 years ago or 17 years ago. And they've kind of obviously been people that were experienced and into tech and into software, and they've kept their finger on the pulse and kind of gone from strength to strength. So I think there's those people that are sort of championing, and then I think there's all the software that's kind of out of our sector coming in and then being utilized. But I think, oh, look, I think everyone's looking at it. I think wherever you work right now, you're probably using something that's an AI tool. We're using it internally. It's great. Like it's game changing for lots of tasks. So I'd say that it's everywhere all at once. It's coming.
Yeah, have you started seeing AI in job titles yet?
Yeah, so we have. So we've got these job titles that are, they're just really long and they're like a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this and a bit of, and then AI woven through it because they want someone who knows everything that they don't know and they are seeing bits. And I guess those people are evolving too because they might know all about some sort of tech that they've helped implement, but that's changing every day in that tech space, like what new software is available, or I've seen this new tool, or I've, so I think that we're definitely seeing them. We're getting roles in every week that are looking for these skills. So I think it's definitely, at a sort of director level, they're looking going, oh, I think we're a bit weak here. Let's hire someone. Let's spend money on that. So I think if you're someone who's passionate about it, great, take it and run with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you're saying it, it sounds like really there's going to be roles, for people who are masters of using AI and can account manage between what the company needs and then what AI can do to facilitate that. Like, and especially in design firms when we're already working on so many different apps already, to add another one in, it's a lot because you've got to get fluent in it as fast as you can. Otherwise, you just don't get the outputs out of it.
Yeah. So I think there's watch this space. I think it'll be more and more. We're actually doing we're going to do an AI. We did a sustainability report last year and we're going to do an AI one. So we've got some specialists from around the world and they'll do a panel and questions and then we'll release another reports which will give a bit of the state of the market right now, like what people are doing, what people are using, what trends we're seeing, what roles are in demand, what roles are less in demand, how it's affecting business commercial running. So we're in the middle of like setting that up now. So that'll be a good one to come along to.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. Actually, the last podcast that's just come out too is someone who's an AI specialist on the Bespoke podcast. So if people are avid listeners and listening to this podcast, you could jump over and have a look at that.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. And then before we wrap up, what's Bespoke got on the horizon that we should be looking out for?
Well, there's the AI report that I just mentioned. I mean, we've got events all around the world, depending on where you are. But I think on our website too, there's actually a page which tells you what's going on. There's actually a kind of where people upload awards and events. We've got our AGM, so we come together and go, what do we need to do better, and how can we service our market better and our clients and our candidates and the people we're finding jobs for. So that's what we're kind of focusing on at this crunchy bit of the year. Yeah, that's kind of it. I think it's busy. We're trying to. If we could just clone certain types of people, the market seems busy, so let's long may it continue, cross the fingers. But yeah, hopefully good days ahead.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Krista, so much for joining us today. In the show notes, of course, I will put links to Bespoke Careers website and events page and to your podcast as well. And naturally, if anyone wants to connect further, they can through those channels or on LinkedIn. Thank you for joining me today. It was so lovely to chat to you.
It is so nice speaking to you, Renee. I've always loved, ever since I first met you, and I think it was at a party in Melbourne. And look, we have, haven't we? I do remember.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I think I've seen you in Hong Kong, or I've definitely seen you in other places around the world. But it's so nice to speak with you today.
Oh, thank you. You too. Bye.